Good evening and welcome to Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, Servergate versus Watergate. The Hillary Clinton email scandal continues to grow, with more than 300 emails now being referred to agencies for, quote, further review. Miranda Kahn has more from our Newsmax Prime newsroom. Miranda?
JD, the email scandal is all the talk among conservatives, and as you may recall, was even addressed by Washington Post investigative journalist Bob Woodward, who said yesterday the scandal reminds him of the Nixon tapes linked to Watergate. Author Ed Klein was on Newsmax Prime last night, and he talked about those comparisons.
I think it's the most important political scandal since Watergate, and could eventually equal Watergate. It hasn't quite yet. But the fact that Bob Woodward, who's an icon in journalism, has compared it to Nixon's troubles, I think is very, very important, because it's a signal to everyone in journalism that now is the time to go after Hillary Clinton.
And Klein went on to say this investigation is not going to be over in a matter of weeks or perhaps even months, but it may take as long as a year, which would bring us right to the tip of the 2016 presidential election. The question many are asking now is, will Mrs. Clinton still be in the race by then? JD?
Thanks, Miranda. For more on this story, we're pleased to be joined via telephone by Patrick J. Buchanan, a political commentator and advisor to Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Reagan. Pat is also the author of the book, The Greatest Comeback: How Richard Nixon Rose from Defeat to Create the New Majority. And joining us from Newsmax Washington, my old congressional colleague and former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra. Pat, you were there with Nixon during Watergate. Do you agree with Ed Klein's assessment? Is this, in essence, the next Watergate?
No, I don't agree with that. Watergate lasted 18 months and brought down a presidency. Hillary Clinton is simply a candidate for the Democratic nomination. But I do believe this. This scandal, which seems to be hemorrhaging, could do for Hillary Clinton's candidacy what Watergate did to Richard Nixon's presidency. Because I don't see where and how it stops now. More and more of these documents had confidential, classified, or secret information on them. And frankly, J.D., I don't see how, as of now, Hillary Clinton retains her security clearances after a performance like this in office, which I think by any measure or standard is really well below what you would expect of a public official.
Pete, let me get your take on what's going on within our intelligence community. Was our national security with this private email server put at risk in the estimation of intelligence professionals?
Well, what they're going to do right now, what they're doing right now, is they're assessing exactly what information was on this private server, what top secret or classified information may have been moving forward on her network. Once they assess that, they have to assume that the Iranians, the Chinese, and the Russians were reading her emails in real time, because this server was not secured. This transmission lines, they were not secure, so these folks had it. And these were some crucial times. Remember, this was when the Green Revolution was going on with Iran. This has been a lot of key events were happening during this time, and I'm sure the community is very concerned about, number one, what was lost, and secondly, when that information was lost, and the Russians or the Chinese found out how we gained access to that intelligence, what did they do to close those leaks out of their systems? Yeah, if there was top secret information, absolutely, we jeopardized our national security.
Pat, let me just get your evaluation of the political community in Washington, specifically the Democrats. There's a lot of panic. Can Hillary endure and still win the Democratic nomination, or is this the beginning of the end of her campaign?
Well, if I were a Democrat and looking forward to the election of 2016, and I looked at what's been done and what's been coming out, what's been revealed, and what looks like it's going to be revealed, and how far the investigation has gone, and the FBI and justice, I would be appalled. I would feel we have a candidate here who's walking through a landmine for the next 18 months And if one of those landmines goes off, that could take out her candidacy and leave you with no one really able to take on the Republican Party. And so I would be profoundly concerned, and I have to think there are a lot of Democrats, or even pro-Hillary Democrats, who are looking at this and saying, do we really want to go down this road when we know how it might end, or is it time to move now to someone else who can win the election? I mean, J.D., the problem with this is it does not end. I mean, there are more and more of these emails and with confidential material on them, and you don't know what's going to go off. And Woodward is right in this sense. I was in the White House all that time. I urged Nixon, look, I don't care what we do, you ought to burn these tapes, all the ones that have nothing to do with subpoenaed conversations, because they're going to keep demanding them and demanding them and demanding them until something pops up. And that's the situation Hillary is in right now.
But it appears, Pete, that Hillary, with her own personality, is going out basically saying, look, I'm going to make fun of this on Snapchat. Look, I'm rising above this. It's the mean old Republicans. Can she get away with that in front of the American people, Pete?
I think she's been terrible in responding to this. She needs to hire a crisis manager. Making a joke about top secret information being on a server and saying, I wish, I was on Snapchat, these things would have automatically disappeared and I wouldn't have had to do it. Just the whole aura of this and saying it's nothing but a partisan attack. She might have had a little bit of leeway, but the American people know what happened to David Petraeus. He lost his clearances, he paid a fine, he lost his jobs. This is no longer in isolation. So I think that, she's not going to get away with it. I think Pat's very, very much correct. Democrats wake up in the morning wondering what the next shoe is that's going to drop, and they know it's not going to be a good one.
Well, let's go ahead, Pat. Yes, sir.
In response to Pete, that's right. Look, Hillary Clinton started off this race just way, way, way out in front. She has steadily been declining in the polls in terms of trustworthiness and credibility. And the polls in the various states, Bernie Sanders moves ahead in New Hampshire. And we're only a few months into this, really. And then you're looking at almost 18 more months of it. I mean, this again was what happened in Watergate. Nixon was at 68% when the POWs came home in 73 and around February and March. By May and June, he was down to 40%. And he never turned it around. I don't see if Hillary could find a place where this is shut down, it's over, we have conclusion, it is settled, now we move on. They don't have that. Every day there's something new, every week there's something new, and every time it comes out it's more embarrassing and more contradictory. And you look down the road, and I don't see where it ends happily.
Well, unfortunately, our time together is just about to end. Patrick J. Buchanan in the White House with Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan. We appreciate your perspective. Pete Hoekstra, my old colleague from Capitol Hill, for your service to the people of Michigan and to the Intelligence Committee, you have our thanks. Still to come, will Donald Trump's candidacy doom the GOP? Michael Reagan says yes, and he'll be here to explain his thinking. Then later, which GOP candidate will be able to bring in the minority vote? Liz Peek and Javier Manjarres will debate that question. But first, Donald Trump introduced his immigration plan over the weekend. He wants to end so-called birthright citizenship. Betsy McCoy and Alan Dershowitz will discuss that next as Newsmax Prime continues.
Newsmax Prime is brought to you by Lear Capital, America's precious metals leader since 1997.